Right. We're done. Beat the game. Beat the game.
The degeneracy of the hamlet is nothing, I fear, when compared to the condition of surrounding acres.
We're done. Nothing else to do. We're done with the game. Oh, I can't. Alright. Sky Taint? It's a funny name. Oh, those guys are gonna be in there forever because they're not playing anymore. All right. Hello, friends. Welcome to Motivational Gaming. I'm Eric. We've completed Darkest Dungeon. Every boss has been killed. What? Clear path to the boss? What is this? Hold on. Is there more to be done? Courtyard after the Countess. That's it. It's the same thing. Alright, well. Anyway, we're done. Everything's done. Got all our buildings done. Got everything maxed out on everything. All that's left is just to put together the story all in one sitting. So let's do it.
Ruin has come to our family. You remember our venerable house?
Opulent and imperial.
Opulent and imperial, gazing proudly from its stoic perch above the moor. I lived all my years in that ancient, rumor-shadowed manor, fattened by decadence and luxury. And yet I began to tire of conventional extravagance. Singular, unsettling tales suggested the mansion itself was a gateway to some fabulous and unnameable power. With relic and ritual, I've bent every effort towards the excavation and recovery of those long-buried secrets. exhausting what remained of our family fortune on swarthy workmen and sturdy shovels. At last, in the salt-soaked crags beneath the lowest foundations, we unearthed that damnable portal of antediluvian evil. Our every step unsettled the ancient earth. But we were in a realm of death and madness. In the end, I alone fled laughing and wailing through those blackened arcades of antiquity. Until consciousness failed me. You remember our venerable house? Opulent and imperial. It is a festering abomination. I beg you, return home, claim your birthright, and deliver our family from the ravenous, clutching shadows of the darkest dungeon.
You will arrive along the old road. It winds with a troubling, serpent-like suggestion through the corrupted countryside, leading only, I fear, to ever more tenebrous places. There is a sickness in the ancient, pitted cobbles of the old road, and on its writhing path, you will face viciousness, violence, and perhaps other damnably transcendent terrors. So steel yourself, and remember there can be no bravery without madness. The old road will take you to hell, but in that gaping abyss, we will find our redemption.
No.
Simple folk are by their nature loquacious, and the denizens of the hamlet were no exception. It was not long before rumors of my morbid genius and secretive excavations began to fuel local legend. In the face of my increasingly egregious flaunting of public taboos, awe turned to ire, and demonstrations were held in the town square. The wild whispers of heresy roused the rabble to violent action. Such was the general air of rebellion that even my generous offer of gold to the local constabulary was rebuffed. To reassert my rule, I sought out unscrupulous men skilled in the application of force. Tight-lipped and terrifying, these mercenaries brought with them a war machine of terrible implication. Eager to end the tiresome domestic distraction, I instructed my newly formed militia of hardened bandits, brigands, and killers to go forth and do their work. Compliance and order were restored, and the noisome population of the hamlet was culled to more manageable numbers. Prying eyes had become a nuisance along the old road, and so I undertook to receive my most curious deliveries by way of marine shipments. A sheltered jetty was accessible by a narrow stone stair off the back of the manor, and a discreet system of pulleys could hoist even the heaviest prizes up the rock face from a securely tied dinghy below. I employed a crew of particularly unsavory mariners, who for a time sailed the four corners at my behest, retrieving many valuable artifacts, relics, and rare texts. Predictably, they increased their tariffs to counter my intense stipulations of secrecy. Such resources had long been exhausted, of course, and so I prepared an alternative payment.
While the greedy dogs slept off their revelry, I hexed their anchor with every twisted incantation I could muster, imbuing it with the weight of my ambition and my contempt for their crude extortion. At the witching hour, the anchor pulled with preternatural force, dragging craft and crew down into the depths. They must have cried out, but no sound escaped the swirling black waters. My zeal for blood rituals and summoning rites had begun to ebb, as each attempt invariably brought only failure and disappointment. Progress was halting, and the rapidly accumulating surplus of wasted flesh had become burdensome. I could not store such a prodigious amount of offal, nor could I rid myself of it easily, possessed as it was by unnameable things from outer spheres. When excavations beneath the manor broke through into an ancient network of aqueducts and tunnels, I knew I had found a solution to the problem of disposal. The spasmodically squirming, braying, and snorting half-corpses were heaped each upon the other until at last I was rid of them. The warrens had become a landfill of snout and hoof, gristle and bone, a mountainous, twitching mass of misshapen flesh fusing itself together in the darkness. I had collected many rare and elusive volumes on ancient herbal properties, and was set to enjoy several weeks immersed in comfortable study. My work was interrupted, however, by a singularly striking young woman who insisted on repeated calls to the house. Her knowledge of horticulturalism and its role in various arcane practices impressed me greatly. My licentious impulse gave way to a genuine professional respect, and together, we began to plant, harvest, and brew. As time wore on, her wild policy of self-experimentation grew intolerable. She quaffed all manner of strange fungi, herbs, and concoctions, intent on gaining some insight into the horror we both knew to be growing beneath us. The change in her was appalling, and no longer able to stomach it, I sent her to live in the Weald, where her wildness would be welcomed. Mastery over life and death was chief among my early pursuits. I began in humility, but my ambition was limitless. Who could have divined the prophetic import of something as unremarkable as a twitch in the leg of a dead rat? I entertained a delegation of experts from overseas, eager to plumb the depths of their knowledge and share with them certain techniques and alchemical processes I had found to yield wondrous and terrifying results. Having learned all I could from my visiting guests, I murdered them as they slept.
Why was he eager to show them off if he was just going to kill them?
I brought my colleagues back with much of their intellect intact. A remarkable triumph for even the most experienced necromancer. Freed from the trappings of their humanity, they plied their terrible trade anew. The dead reviving the dead, on and on, down the years. Forever.
Excavations beneath the manor were well underway when a particularly ragged indigent arrived in the hamlet. This filthy, toothless miscreant boasted an uncanny knowledge of my ambitions and prognosticated publicly that, left unchecked, I would soon unleash doom upon the world. This raving creature had to be silenced, but doing so proved maddeningly impossible. How had he survived the stockades, the icy waters, and the knives I delivered so enthusiastically into his back? How had he returned time and time again to rouse the townfolk with his wild speculations and prophecies? Finally, Resigned to his uncommon corporeal resilience, I lured him to the dig. There, I showed him the thing, and detailed the full extent of my plans. Triumphantly, I watched as he tore his eyes from their sockets, and ran shrieking into the shadows, wailing maniacally that the end was upon us all. My lofty position wasn't always accompanied by the fear of office. And there was a time when I could walk the streets or raise a glass in the tavern without concern for molestation. Faithful as the tide, one precocious village waif made it her hobby to shadow my every errand. It was charming then, troublesome later. In financial desperation, I struck a bargain with the ancient things that surfaced in search of sacrifice when the moon was right. Their price was the delivery of an obscure idol, and one other item of more troubling portent. The pact struck. My newfound accomplices slipped silently beneath the brackish water. A fearful stirring at the edge of the torchlight betrayed a familiar witness, and gifted me with malign inspiration. Under the blood moon, I lured my wide-eyed prey to the pier's edge. Before she could properly appreciate her position, I clamped on a manacle, chaining her to the leering idol. A small push was sufficient to send both into the icy waters. And when at length the tide receded, jewels of the most magnificent grandeur lay scattered upon the shore. The ways and rituals of blood sacrifice are difficult to master. Those from beyond require a physical vessel if they are to make the crossing into our reality. The timing of the chants is imperative. Without the proper utterances at precise intervals, the process can fail spectacularly. My first attempts at summoning were crude, and the results disappointing. I soon found, however, that the type and condition of the host's meat was a critical factor. The best results came from pigs, whose flesh is most like that of man.
Huh.
The great thing I had managed to bring through was brutish and stupid. Moreover, it required prodigious amounts of meat to sustain itself. But this was only a trifling concern. After all, I had a village full of it. The courtyard and gardens surrounding the manor were once a point of pride for the diligent custodians I employed. Great banquets and lavish social affairs were hosted here under the stars. Despite the expectation of propriety normally ascribed to those in our position, we mocked the stoic melancholy of the moss-covered fountains and cherubic statues, our salacious trysts half hidden in the hedgerows, our morality slipping ever deeper into the mud. In those younger years, my home was a hive of unbridled hedonism, a roiling apiary where instinct and impulse were indulged with wild abandon. A bewitching predator slipped in amidst the swarm of tittering sycophants. Though outwardly urbane, I could sense in her a mocking thirst. Driven half-mad by cloying vulgarity, I plotted to rid myself of this lurking threat in a grand display of sadistic sport. But as the moment of murder drew nigh, the gibbous moon revealed her inhuman desires in all their stultifying hideousness.
How's the guild? Hey, Kel the Warrior, how you doing? Guild's doing good, thanks. We just had a meeting today to make things go. It's a plan for the future, and it's going well. Freaking ads, I hear that.
Madness can take many forms, but none so contemptible as man's belief in a mythology of his own making. A worldview buttressed by dogmatic desperation invariably leads to single-minded fanaticism and a need to do terrible things in the name of righteousness. This man is an animal, rabid, destructive, and incapable of nuanced understanding. He must be put down. They would arrive in teeming hordes, adorned in powdered wigs and pretension, seeking to slake their thirst on wine and indecency. As intoxication invariably took hold, innocuous frivolities would escalate to ever more disturbing diversions. Orchestrating the hideous affair was a hunchbacked fiend who seemed to delight in proportion to the suffering he caused. I could have stopped him, I suppose, but I was a slave to my own appetites, and restraint would have rendered me a hypocrite. The feasting and revelry would last for weeks at a time. Great stone tables were set with such an abundance of rare delicacies that we would stuff ourselves until the exotic became mundane. When the lavish spread began to spoil, a ravenous gourmand gleefully proposed that we sample from the fetid pile of composting refuse. The notion was dismissed as decidedly unhealthy. But days later, he was found cackling madly atop a heap of rancid comestibles, licking his fingers in delight. Mercifully, the morbid encounter resolved itself in my favor, and I set to work pursuing degeneracy in its most decadent forms. The air pulsed with anticipation as I revealed the unnatural terroir of the house vintage. But my exultation was cut short as the attending gentry turned upon themselves in an orgy of indescribable frenzy. A single drop of that forbidden tannin gifted me with a dizzying glimpse of the hibernating horror beneath my feet, and in that moment, I understood the terrible truth of the world. I stood reborn, molded by newfound knowledge, my head throbbing to the growing wine of winged vermin come to drink the tainted blood of the darkest dungeon.
Of the darkest dungeon.
Blight had struck the harvest again that year, and the miller was desperate. He came to me, hat clutched tightly in filthy fingers, stinking of sweat and manure. Seated comfortably in my observatory, surrounded by telescopes and other delicate apparatus, I recognized his misfortune as an opportunity, and I agreed to lend him my expertise.
You doing any raids? We're getting some plans going. I gotta talk to my to an officer who's interested in running raids. But in the near future should be. Hopefully, yeah. I hope so.
Slabs etched with certain celestial designs were erected around the perimeter of the farmstead. The miller, lamentably eager for some early sign of improvement, fixed his watery eyes intently upon the wilted fields and listless mill. My gaze, however, was cast skyward, and I marveled at the limitless profanity of the stars, wondering what harvest might come. The poor miller. Thrice a victim. The seasons took his livelihood. I took his land. And now, uncountable years later, the comet has taken his humanity. My only regret is that I did not live to see that shoddy mill smashed to pieces by the miraculous bounty I reaped from beyond the void.
Alright, now we got the journal pages, so We got the journal pages, and then we got the last little bit for the story. So let's look at these journal pages. A trample journal. Sebastian's watch was his last. We were jolted during our evening's repast, the best we could make in those murky halls of our once great house, from the roar and flash of black powder. We dropped our bowls and hurried to him. All we could find was his spent pistol and a trail of blood leading into a maze of shadows. We press on. We fought in the East Gallery, filled with portraits of our ancient lineage, uncaring witnesses to the slaughter. Al-Hazred, the fiery heartbeat of our retinue, wrought keen havoc in our enemies' ranks. I keenly feel his absence, even as I remember voiding myself upon seeing his lifeless body fall, blood pouring from his screaming mouth, some cruel knife having rent his lungs to gore. Yet we were victorious, and thus we press on. Hellwell, dear friend, exemplary warrior, a survivor of the King's Wars, and many sorties in these halls, met in an ignoble end. We were wary, Hillwell and I, as we searched for sanctuary. Wariness, it appears, has a murderous streak. It blinded him to the mechanism that tripped the spikes that eviscerated him. I held him as his essence slipped away, another giant fallen in our mad pursuit. I am alone now, wary, but unbowed. I press on. I am become vengeance. All cultists will feel my mace. Brigands, feel my roar. I am outnumbered, 'tis true. I am starved and half mad, but as long as there is breath in my body, I will press on. I will wreak unbearable agony on those who would seek to despoil my great manse, and now they come. I douse my torch. I do not fear the darkness. This is my house, and woe to the uninvited. Let's do them in order, the rest of them in order. This is from the Shieldbreaker. I am a beautiful thing, they say, flawless as the sea of dunes, graceful as the desert wind, captivating as a shimmering mirage. They stare, they linger, they watch me without blinking. Such exquisiteness must be admired, they say, and so I am made to dance for their desperate, dust-pitted faces, for their watery, bloodshot eyes, their cracked, grinning lips. I am not a person to this debauched audience. I am an exotic wonder. I am a beautiful thing. Such loveliness belongs in the palace, they say, and so my hands are tied, and I am put in a caravan next to golden idols and jeweled icons. Together, we are a priceless cargo of dazzling rarities, bound for the vizier's treasury. I know this tyrant's reputation, and I am afraid. As the wagon careens along the mountain road, I make my choice. I will not go to the vizier. I will not be this man's prize, his plaything. With practiced grace, I slip my bonds and lunge for the open air. The wagon teeters and the guards shout. Wheels lift. Horses panic. I am lodged in a jumble of corses and wreckage. My arm is pinned. The serpent appears silently from behind a rock, tongue tasting the air. The bite is quick. The venom slow. It runs cold in my veins, inching up my arm, forcing me to make a terrible choice. That's why the Shieldbreaker's missing her arm. The knife is dull, and I must work quickly. In my panic, I saw, hack, and gouge. My cries are met with the silent indifference of the dunes, the chill of the desert wind, the cold light of the moon. I am sacrificing my beauty for a chance to live, paying for my future with the only currency I've ever had. I stare at my severed hand, my bloodied arm. There will be no more leering crowds, no more coins thrown at my feet. I breathe a wordless thanks to my liberator as it slithers away into the shadows. At last, I am free of my gilded cage. At last, I finally understand. A thing cannot be truly beautiful until it is broken. Huh. 1 second. Blood-soaked pages torn from a journal. These dark caves drip with an overabundance of humidity. Beyond my threshold of comfort, I nearly broke my ankle on the rocks. made slick with some ubiquitous slime. The pools stir and slush with no visible cause, and the shadows beyond torchlight seem to grow and shrink of their own accord. My fears are confirmed. With our torch doused by an errant spray of seawater, we were ambushed. Strange, fish-like hominoids ambushed us in the sodden darkness. The pitch of the torch caught quickly, and I glimpsed scaly appendages swinging crude weapons, glistening and barbed. They didn't last long with our torch rekindled. Alas, one bit me on the neck before I gutted it. The wound stings and tingles strangely. Our physic told me to keep it clean and covered. The wound is starting to fester. The flesh around it is gray, flaking and rigid, almost scale-like. As I write this, my breathing has taken on a hollow timbre and more labored. My compatriots are laughing. Tell me not to worry. It's just the salt mist in the air that pervades these caverns. They are sleeping. I am kept from slumber by a distinct stream of whispers, as if carried by the currents and waves of the sea. I have not told them that most of my flesh has slawed off, revealing a strange, silvery membrane. I keep myself covered. They questioned me when I ate the meat raw at Campfell, and found my response difficult to understand. I suppose it would be best to explain my condition when they awaken. Then they would be convinced of my urgency to leave and find aid in the hamlet. The others are gone. They were victims of a malevolent transformation. Their scales had rotted to soft, vulnerable flesh, slowly suffocating without gills. The worst was their eyes, close set and forced to squint through fleshly slits. I shudder, recalling the horrific and unclean warmth of their blood. As I rinsed my talons, I nearly retched. May death grant them soft mercy. Okay. Changed his mental mindset, too. I cannot recall why we ventured onto land. Why did we leave when Mother Ocean provided all we needed beneath her tender waves? I will now return home, back to her embrace. Indecipherable scratchings for the remainder of the page. Huh. Okay. Beautiful thing. Journal of Darius, Highwayman. Day 1. Rare are travelers on this roads What? Oh, okay. Rare are travelers on this roads this autumn, and rather than starve, I pressed my last coin into the hand of one who dealt in rumors and shadows. Ravens carried cryptic notes that there was a person, or persons, who was pledging coin for services, best left unmentioned in a hamlet I had never heard of. I am packing to leave immediately. Day 4. The road to this damnable hamlet was a tricky one, both to find and to travel. When it revealed its ruined face, I swore I had never seen such neglect. Some buildings collapsed, and uncaring residents fidgeting uselessly. I went swiftly to the tavern. Others with similar interests had gathered there, and I was assembled into an expedition. We leave at first light on the morrow. Day 6. As we traveled from the hamlet, an eerie dread grew. We all felt it, but did our best to shrug it off. Sleep was difficult until Raven, one of my companions, passed me a bitter concoction. The most devout of us, Therion, prayed softly for our safety. Superstitious but well-intentioned, I suppose. I am already falling asleep. Day 7. We tangled with some unruly louts. Raven called them cultists. They were ferocious, but clumsy. Day 8. Moira has been afflicted with sickness. It must have been some rotting air from a coffin she insisted on piercing with her spade. As terrible as this place is, I know I will not fall for any trap nor crazed idiot. I wager my lucky coin on it. My end. I scrawl this, victim of cruel fortune, who took me up on my wager, for I have lost my lucky coin, and I now lie helpless as my blood flows swiftly from my ruined body. My fingers are cold. It was no trap, nor raving cultist that sealed my fate. We were ambushed by strange, undulating shapes, 2 small entities that I cannot help to describe, and a third, much larger beast. Poor Moira was crushed into a pulp as Therion defended her. He soon lost his arm, and his wits left him, Shambler! Shambler! He kept shrieking as Raven yanked him to flee. I tried to play hero, to buy them a few moments. Blew away one of the smaller monsters. Last shot. Then smashed into the wall. The big one. Maybe they made it out. So they were killed by shamblers. Our purpose was to desecrate their animalistic shrines and thus disperse the swine folk. But soon we came across an artifact. This was far beyond the crude fetishes crafted by the pigmen. It looked as if obsidian had been grown and twisted into a dark symbol of worship. It cradled a pulsing red orb glowing with malevolent light. Cuthbert, Boylan, and I hesitated, but thrice-damned Miser, driven by crazed impulse, thrust his torch in a hidden receptacle and thus sealed our fate. So they were also killed by a shambler. In that same instant, we found ourselves in a place of suffocating dark, facing a creature that defies description and whose recollection causes my quill to jump and shudder. It is merciful. Only fragments of our battle remain in my psyche. I see Cuthbert hacking at the quivering appendages of the monster. I recall how a piece of its flesh slawed off, and its own twisted cord sprang onto Boylan, piercing her stout plate. The occultist, as if to offer himself as tribute, was torn apart by its writhing limbs. The assault was overwhelming. With Cuthbert slain and as Boylan fell, I was driven by rage. I leapt and drove my axe into the creature's many eyes. Purple ichor splashed my face, and my very soul shook as it bellowed. The only thing I can recall after was falling swiftly into blackness. I now find myself back in the Warrens, among the remains of my companions. My wounds are too severe to allow the completion of my task. Thus the desecration must resume another time. Curious, there is a ring in my pocket. Where it came from, I cannot begin to guess, though it bears the sigil of the estate's ancestral owner. Very curious. I will return with Cuthbert's banner and Boylan's crossbow, as if to honor them with a proper burial. I will leave what is left of thrice-damned Miser and his trinkets to the swine folk. Perhaps they will build him the memorial he rightly deserves. Huh. Interesting. Those are some cool stories, though.
Once again, the stars are right, and the manor sits at the very epicenter of cosmic unrest. Cultists rally to their twisted idols, and great gongs sound in anticipation of the coming sacrifices. Far below, life-laden shadows pulse to the unrelenting rhythm of a beating heart. The thing has no name, for it needs no language. Nevertheless, those who would submit to its wordless will are rewarded in a fashion. The creature's blessings are as repulsive as they are robust. Twisted, half-human monstrosities stalk the flesh-ridden halls, protecting their gestating god.
For some reason I can't get into your Discord. For the guild? Or for my live stream? Or for the live streams? Which one? I can send you an invite.
The interminable stone holds are but an antechamber. The creature is vast beyond measure, and must be battled from within. Step over the threshold, and let the terrible truth worm its way into your mind.
Oh, that's the one we just did.
The interminable stone holds are but an antechamber.
Okay.
The creature is vast beyond measure, and must be battled from within. Step over the threshold, and let the terrible truth worm its way into your mind.
I didn't mean to do that one twice.
Victory. A hollow and ridiculous notion. We are born of this thing, made from it, and we will be returned to it in time. The great family of man. A profusion of errant flesh, multiplying, swarming, living, dying, until the stars align in their inexorable formation, and what sleeps is roused once more. To hatch from this fragile shell of earth and rock, and bring our inescapable end. So seek solace in a manner befitting your lineage, and take up your
Worthless
vigil. Haunted forever by that sickening prose echoing through the infinite blackness of space and time. Ruin has come to our family.
Alright, and that's it. That's the story for the game. And we ended at roughly 15 million gold. Holy crap. Huh. Alright, well, I didn't really want to have a big stream. It took 41 minutes to go through the whole story. I'm sick and I need some rest, so I'm gonna take a shower, drink some tea, maybe lay down. That's what I'm gonna do. So, alright, Darkest Dungeon, finally done. We put the done in dungeon. Good game. More fun with this mod because it's not frustrating. And, yeah, might pick it up sometime later, so catch you later. Thanks for stopping by, Cal. I'll catch you later, alright, my friend? I need to lay down.